I always believed the family room had a pulse of its own. It breathed with the rhythm of familiar evenings, weak sunlight through the curtains, the faint hum of the old refrigerator, the soft chatter of the TV. This was the hour of the day when my bones eased, my thoughts settled like dust on a bookshelf, and my life finally felt like it still belonged to me. My green armchair, the one I bought 15 years ago with the first survivor's benefit after my husband passed, sat in its usual spot, facing the television. A cup of cinnamon tea cooled on the side table. The scent of peach cobbler slipped out from the kitchen like a warm whisper. For a woman my age, this kind of quiet was sacred. Which is why the slam of the front door felt like someone had dropped a stone into calm water. I didn't need to look. I knew the footsteps, heavy and careless. Derek, my son-in-law, walked the way animals mark territory loudly, as if the house itself needed to know he was here. Behind him came my daughter, Lena, weighed down by shopping bags and a silence that had become her second skin. Derek didn't greet. He didn't even glance at me. He marched straight up to the TV, blocking the screen with his broad back like a wall suddenly erected between me and my peace. Then the sound I dreaded, the remote control clicking. The TV went dark. Up, he barked without turning. Go to your room, Celeste, game S on, the living room is mine. Mine, the word ricocheted off every corner of the room. I lifted my eyes slowly, not to him, he wasn't worth the strain, but to my daughter. She stood there clutching her bags, eyes lowered, shoulders curved inward like someone trying to fold themselves out of sight. I waited for her to say something, anything. To your room, old woman should have sparked a fire inside her. Instead, she shifted one bag and stared at the floor tiles. Her silence was worse than his shouting. I rose to my feet. My knees complained, as they always did, but the sound echoed differently this time. Not like old bones creaking, but like a key turning inside a long-neglected lock. Derek was already sprawled across my couch, unlacing the top button of his shirt, reaching for a soda he hadn't bought, settling in like a king returning to a throne someone else built. He didn't notice me leave. I wasn't going to my room. I walked to my bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, and pulled out a small leather case. Inside it, keys, a blue folder sealed with a thick elastic band, and documents I had guarded for decades. I kept them not because I expected to use them, but because a woman learns to hold on to the things that prove her existence. A deed, a bill of sale. My name, clear and unshakable, Celeste M. Everson. This house wasn't his kingdom. It wasn't even Lena's. It was mine, paid for with 2 lifetimes worth of work, loss, and survival. I caught my reflection in the mirror, short gray hair, glasses on a chain, linen pants, blouse tucked neatly, a grandmother on the outside, a storm gathering on the inside. Derek's mistake wasn't yelling. His mistake was assuming I had nowhere else to go. Keys in hand, I walked back through the family room. The sports channel now blared loudly, loud enough that he didn't hear my footsteps. Lena glanced up once, briefly, as if her eyes were reaching for mine, but her courage wasn't. At the door, Derek shouted over his shoulder, "Where you going? Don't get lost at your age." I didn't answer, I didn't even look at him. I stepped outside and locked the gate from the outside, a tiny click, but it sounded like thunder in my chest. A cab pulled up. "The Grand Hyatt, please," I said, and my voice did not shake. As the city lights blurred past the window, I scrolled to a name in my phone. Attorney Andrew Sterling, a man who understood paperwork the way surgeons understand anatomy. "Celeste, it's late, what's wrong?" "I'm done," I replied, "and I need your help tomorrow morning." There was a pause, the respectful kind. "I'm listening." "I'm evicting 2 tenants." And just like that, the storm inside me finally began to move. She thought leaving the house was the boldest step she'd take, but the real shock would come the next morning, when her daughter found out the law had already knocked on their door. The Grand Hyatt room welcomed me with the kind of clean, structured stillness a woman can breathe in like fresh air. I hadn't planned this. No bag, no toothbrush, not even a spare blouse. But I had something better, the feeling of stepping back into my own dignity. I dropped my keys on the nightstand. The soft clatter sounded like a declaration. A well-trained voice from reception asked if I needed help with luggage. "I only brought my purse," I said gently. "Everything else can wait its turn." Room service brought me tomato soup and a small glass of Cabernet. I ate slowly, tasting the freedom between each sip. My thoughts drifted to the house, not with longing, but with a clarity I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I knew their routines. Derek woke up late, always claiming exhaustion from work, though no one had ever seen concrete evidence of that work. Lena scrambled around him like a shadow adjusting itself, softening every sharp edge he created. I imagined the morning ahead. The moment the doorbell rang. Roman, the junior associate Andrew promised to send, would be punctual, crisp, and calm. The law has a voice of its own, even when it arrives wearing a tailored suit. After finishing dinner, I climbed into bed, turned on my favorite channel, and chose a volume neither too loud nor muted. For once, I wasn't adjusting myself to anyone else's temper. I slept deeply, like someone who finally stopped holding her breath. By sunrise, I felt lighter. I showered, pinned my hair neatly, and slipped back into the clothes I had worn the day before. But when I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back wasn't yesterday's version of me. She stood straighter. Her eyes were sharper. She had made a decision, and decisions have a way of rearranging a face. At 8:00 a.m., I walked into Andrew Sterling's office. You don't work 35 years in county records without recognizing a man who understands paperwork the way generals understand strategy. Andrew was tall, silver-haired, with glasses that always looked like they were sliding dangerously close to the edge of his nose. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't need to. "We'll start with the termination notice," he said, flipping through the documents Roman had already drafted. "They're staying in your home without a lease. That gives you full authority to remove them." "Peacefully and legally," I emphasized. He nodded. "Roman will serve them personally. Clear language, zero room for interpretation." I signed the papers. My signature looked different, firmer, like it had muscle again. From the corner of my eye, I saw Roman, a young man in a sharp charcoal suit, check the address, adjust his tie, and head out. His steps were precise, purposeful. He carried the envelope like a verdict. I sat in the reception area with a cup of machine coffee. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. With each second, the house I once tiptoed through was becoming something else, a place with boundaries. My phone vibrated on my knee at 9:30. The caller ID flashed, Lena. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mama, Mama, for God's sake, there's a man here, he's holding a document." Derek's yelling, "He's furious, what is this?" Her voice cracked. In the background, Derek's rage crashed like furniture being moved violently. I held the phone a small distance from my ear. "That man is Roman," I replied calmly. "He's delivering a notice, read it carefully." "Mama, it says 30 days, eviction. Are you insane?" "No," I said. "For the first time in a long while, I am completely sane." "But why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you discuss this with us?" I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her words settle. "For 4 years," I said slowly, "I was spoken over, talked down to, and ordered to my room in my own home, and you, my daughter, stood silent." She inhaled sharply. "Guilt makes a particular sound, fragile and metallic." Derek yelled again, demanding explanations. I waited until the noise faded enough for my voice to land. "Tell him," I said softly, "that the old woman is unavailable for shouting today." Then I ended the call. The click of the red button felt like closing a heavy door, one that should have been shut long ago. Andrew peeked into the reception area. "Everything okay?" "Everything," I said, "has finally begun." But Celeste had only pulled the first thread. What unraveled next would reveal secrets, money trails, and a truth her daughter wasn't ready to face. When people talk about power, they think of voices raised, doors slammed, threats tossed like stones. But true power, quiet, legal, final, moves with a softer sound. It's the sound of a pen scratching across a form, a service suspension clicking into effect, a supplementary card blinking declined. By the time Lena's frantic call faded into silence, I had already made my next decision. "Andrew," I said, placing my purse on my lap, "we need to proceed with the financial separations today." He arched one eyebrow, the kind of subtle approval only a seasoned attorney gives when a client finally stops negotiating with chaos. "What exactly would you like to cut off?" "Everything," I replied. "Everything in my name." He nodded once. He understood. With men like Derek, money wasn't just convenience, it was ego, fuel, and camouflage. While Andrew went to print additional forms, I opened my purse and took out a small notebook, the kind where I wrote grocery lists, birthdays, and quiet reminders. Today it would hold something far more important, the outline for a life reclaimed. I wrote, Step 1, legal boundaries. Done. Step 2, financial boundaries. Immediate. Step 3, silence. No arguments, no emotional wrestling, just execution. Underlined twice. I dialed the internet service provider. The operator read my file with the cheerful neutrality of someone who didn't know a revolution was underway. "Yes, ma'am, I can suspend all services, effective within 2 hours." "That's fine," I replied. "Be sure to suspend the sports package as well." "Of course, sports package." Derek's second religion after shouting. "Next call, cable and landline." Then the bank. "I'd like the supplementary card blocked, the one issued under my daughter's name." "Reason for block, security," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant protection for me. Once the lock was confirmed, I leaned back in the chair. My heart didn't race, it didn't throb. It simply settled into a steady rhythm, like gears finally clicking into the right position. Andrew returned, holding a thin stack of papers. I assume you're aware this will cause immediate discomfort. Yesterday was humiliation, I said. Today is only discomfort, they're different. He gave the faintest smirk, not mockery respect. After leaving the office, I walked 2 blocks to the nearby mall. Not to shop for pleasure, no, that era ended long ago, but to find something I hadn't worn in years, authority. A young consultant named Jenna greeted me without the coddling tone older women often endure. Good, I didn't come here for pity. I need a uniform, I said. What kind? The kind you wear when you no longer beg for respect but expect it. She returned with navy trousers, a crisp white blouse, and a beige linen blazer. When I put them on, something subtle shifted. My reflection wasn't flashy or fierce, it was orderly, intentional, upright. A woman who had stopped giving discounts on her self-worth. I handed Jenna my old clothes in a neat bundle. Please donate these, I said. Someone else may need them for the parts of their life they're still figuring out. I stepped into the mall corridor and made one last call to my bank's fraud line, confirming that SMS alerts were now locked to my number only. The operator didn't ask why. Sometimes the universe spares you questions when your resolve is strong enough. On the second-floor restaurant, I ordered mushroom risotto and a glass of dry white wine. When the bank notification flashed on my phone 5 minutes later, I didn't even need to turn it over to know what it was. Transaction declined. $85, Prime Rabbi. I smiled faintly, a small, private acknowledgement of a system working exactly as designed. Another message popped up immediately after. Card isn't working, call the bank, we're at the counter. Derek's number. I took a sip of wine before calling him back. It's not a malfunction, I said calmly. It's a freeze. The trust and the money expired at the same time. He began shouting, sputtering, demanding explanations. I didn't offer any. I simply placed the phone face down on the table and finished my lunch, spoonful by peaceful spoonful. Later, back at the hotel, I kicked off my shoes and let myself sink onto the bed. The soft hum of the air conditioner replaced the usual tension in my shoulders. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel threatening. It felt deserved. At dusk, the hotel phone rang. Your daughter is downstairs, the receptionist said. She insists on seeing you. I adjusted my blazer, smoothed my hair, and watched my reflection settle into place. Tell her, I said, I'll be right down. But Celeste didn't expect the confrontation waiting in the lobby, a daughter torn between loyalty, fear, and a truth she could no longer ignore. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet sigh, and there she was, Lena, pacing in the hotel lobby like a child waiting outside a principal's office. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her blouse was wrinkled, her bun leaning to one side, eyes puffy with either tears or sleeplessness, likely both. She saw me in the beige blazer and stopped mid-step, almost stumbling. Mama, her voice cracked in a way that could have tugged at my heart years ago. Today it only nudged my patience, not my resolve. Sit, I said gently, pointing to an armchair. This is a hotel lobby, not a battlefield. Let's keep our voices civilized. She sat on the very edge of the chair, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Mama, what is all this? The internet is gone, the TV too. My card was declined at the store, people were staring. Derek is losing it. Do you understand what you've caused? I took the chair across from her. Calm, centered, in control. I caused order, I corrected softly. There's a difference. She blinked rapidly, confusion wrestling with frustration inside her eyes. But you could have talked to us first. Vanished in the middle of the night. Derek said you left without a word. He told me to go to my room, I replied. So I did, I found a better one. Her lips parted but no sound came out. It wasn't meant like that, she whispered finally. He was stressed, he had a hard day, he apologized. Lena, I cut in, yelling at someone who bought the roof over his head is not stress, it's entitlement. She swallowed hard. But Derek is worried about his job. He has meetings, deadlines. Without the internet, he's a grown man, I replied. He can buy his own connection from his own money. Silence stretched between us, taut and trembling. You're humiliating us, she said, her voice tight. Today at the butcher shop when the card failed, people were watching. Do you know how that felt? I leaned back, letting the full truth settle like dust. Humiliation is being pushed out of your own living room, I said quietly. Humiliation is eating the burnt part of the pie so someone else can have the better piece. Humiliation is paying triple the utilities for 4 years and still being told to go to your room. Her face softened, the shock hitting her like cold water. We were saving, she whispered. We had a plan, you knew this. Savings? I tilted my head. Tell me, Lena, how much have you saved in 4 years living off my income? Where is it? She stared at the marble floor, blinking, chasing for words that wouldn't arrive. Derek said it was tied up, a business thing, investments. He showed me some numbers once. I didn't understand all of it. A painful tenderness rose in my chest, not pity but recognition. I once believed men's words more than my own instincts too. Age teaches you which lies sound the prettiest. You will see everything tomorrow, I said. At Andrew Sterling's office, 10 a.m. sharp. Her head shot up. Called a lawyer against your own family. I called the law, I corrected, because family respects boundaries. When they don't, they are roommates. When roommates abuse the owner, they become tenants, and tenants receive notices. Her eyes shone with something raw fear or realization. If we leave the house, she whispered, Derek says he'll divorce me. And what did that tell you? I asked. That he loves you or that he loves my square footage. She inhaled sharply, the truth cutting deeper than she expected. He didn't mean it that way. Oh, he meant it exactly that way. Her shoulders slumped. She was unraveling not in weakness but in awakening. What if, she hesitated, voice trembling, what if I can't do this on my own? I leaned forward, took her hands gently. You're 40 years old. If you can survive a man's temper, you can survive an apartment lease. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. Just then, her phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed across the screen, over and over like an alarm she couldn't silence. She turned it face down. I can't go home tonight, she whispered. Not like this. That's not my decision anymore, I said. Tonight you choose your own roof. Lena stood slowly. She looked at me with eyes that finally saw me not as a cushion or servant but as a person with a spine. I'll be there at 10, she said. I promise. She walked away, step unsteady but direction clear. And for the first time in years, I let her go without following. But what unfolded in the attorney's conference room the next morning would expose more than disrespect. It would unravel Derek's lies, one document at a time. The next morning, the conference room felt colder than the hallway outside. Not cold from temperature, no, this chill came from anticipation. It was the kind of cold that forms before storms, before verdicts, before truths. I arrived early. I always do. Years in county records taught me that the person who sits down first controls the tempo of the room. Andrew Sterling was already reviewing a stack of documents. His silver hair glinted under the overhead lights. Sit at the head, he said quietly, so I did. In front of me, my ID, the deed of title, the termination, notice a timeline of the last 4 years' paper armor, arranged neatly. Ready? Andrew asked. I've been ready for years, I replied. At 10:03 the paralegal cracked the door open. They're here. And then the circus walked in. Derek entered first, his swagger wilted like a plant left too long in the sun. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie crooked, hair a mess from tugging, either from stress or temper, both equally likely. Behind him came Lena, clutching her purse to her stomach like a shield. Let's make this quick, Derek snapped. This whole thing is ridiculous. Andrew nodded politely. Please take a seat. Derek dragged a chair out with exaggerated force and dropped into it. Lena followed more quietly. You know, Derek began loudly, leaning back as if this were his show, we've lived in that house for years, we have rights. I clasped my hands calmly. Rights come with leases and payments, I replied. You had neither. You can't throw out family, he barked. You stopped acting like family, I said. I am simply removing tenants. That hit him. He bristled. Andrew cleared his throat. Let's begin. He slid the termination notice toward them. 30 days to vacate. After that, legal action, standard procedure. This is illegal, Derek spat. We lived there openly, that's adverse possession, look it up, I almost smiled. I've looked it up, I said, for 35 years. Adverse possession requires that the true owner stop paying taxes, step away and never object. I paid every bill, I lived in the house, and today I'm objecting. He blinked, hard. His mouth opened but no words came out. Lena watched him, confusion knitting her brows. Let's move to finances, Andrew said. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I opened a folder and slid several sheets toward Lena. 4 years, I said softly, of subsidized living. I paid the full mortgage, utilities, internet, cable, groceries, repairs. You were supposedly saving. Lena looked at the papers, her fingers shaking. The savings should have been nearly 100,000, I continued. Where is it? Derek scoffed. You wouldn't understand investments. His arrogance in that moment, breathtaking. Investments, I repeated. You mean these? I pulled out printed brokerage statements. Margin calls, overdrawn accounts. 3 notices in red. Derek lunged for them, but Andrew placed a firm hand on the papers, pinning them down. Your wife deserves to read them, the attorney said sharply. I slid the documents toward Lena. She hesitated, then began reading. Her eyes moved, stopped, widened. Filled, zero, she whispered. Negative balance, Derek, you said we were saving. I was going to fix it, he shouted. The market dipped, I just needed one more deposit. I leaned back in my chair. And that, I said calmly, is why you needed my living room, not for comfort, for cover. He slammed his fist on the table. I am your son-in-law, families help each other. Family respects each other, I responded. You did neither. Silence, heavy, crushing, then I stood. Not abruptly, just enough to shift the gravity of the room. Here are the terms, I said. 30 days to move out. No utilities restored. Connect your own, pay your own. Any shouting, threats, or harassment, write Arrow police report. Immediately, upon departure, an inventory will be completed. Damages billed. Derek slumped. The arrogance slid off him like old paint. Lena covered her mouth with both hands. Tears slipped through her fingers. I turned to her gently. For 30 days, I said, you have a choice. Stay with a man who gambled away everything or step into your own life. She didn't speak, but her silence wasn't the silence she'd given Derek. It was the silence of someone beginning to see. The meeting ended, chairs scraped, papers shuffled. Derek stormed out first. Lena lingered. Mama, her voice was small, fragile. I don't know if I can go home with him. You don't have to, I answered softly. She nodded once and followed the hallway out, not beside Derek, but several steps behind him. But as Celeste stepped outside the office, her phone buzzed, a message from Lena that would change everything about the next 30 days. The moment I exited the attorney's office, the sun felt strangely bright, almost too warm for what had just happened inside those four walls. Power has a temperature, I realized. Sometimes it burns. Sometimes it chills. Today, it settled like a steady glow on my shoulders. I walked down the steps slowly, letting my breathing return to normal. The conference room had exposed more than Derek's lies. It had exposed the fragility of the life my daughter had built around him. My phone vibrated. Lena, one missed call. Lena, text. I didn't get in his car. He's yelling. I walked away. I paused on the sidewalk, reading it twice. Then a second message came. He says you broke our family, that you humiliated him. I don't think that's true anymore. I exhaled long and steady. The first crack, not in their marriage, no, that was already shattered. This was the first crack in the lie she'd been living. I called her back immediately. She answered on the first ring, breath shaky. Mama, where are you? I asked. Near the parking lot. He's in the car. He's screaming, hitting the steering wheel. He told me to get in, but I couldn't. Good, I said gently. Step away from the noise. She sniffed, wiping her nose. He blames you for everything. Fiction, the savings, his gambling losses, everything. He said you want to destroy us. He destroyed the savings himself, I replied. I only turned on the light. Silence, not empty thinking silence. You didn't break anything, Lena, you just stopped pretending. Her voice trembled. I'm scared, I don't know what comes next. What comes next, I said carefully, is the first honest decision you've made in years. She let out a shaky breath. I think I'm going to stay at Zoe's tonight. She has a small spare room, or more like a cot, but I can't go home. That's a very good choice. We stayed on the phone for another minute saying nothing. Sometimes silence is the closest thing to a hug you can give over a call. Before hanging up, I added, tomorrow we meet Andrew again at 10, be there. I will, she whispered. She ended the call, but I didn't move, not yet. The city hummed around me, but I stood still, absorbing the moment. This wasn't victory, this wasn't revenge. This was the slow turning of a wheel that had rusted for years. I took a cab to a restaurant by the river, calm, warm, nothing loud. At a window table, I ordered clam chowder and a fresh salad. The server placed the food before me as softly as if I were recovering from surgery. In some way I was. As I ate, my phone buzzed again. A different notification. Bank, transfer completed, beneficiary changes processed. Everything was shifting into my name again, cleanly, properly. Not out of spite, but restoration. I sipped my tea slowly, watching the sunlight shiver across the water. People outside walked their dogs, pushed strollers, lived their small lives. How strange, I thought, that my biggest transformation could happen in the same city where people were arguing about parking spots or coffee flavors. After finishing lunch, I walked along the riverfront. My steps felt grounded. Even the breeze felt different, like it finally recognized me as someone who belonged to her own life. When I returned to the hotel later that evening, I kicked off my shoes and laid back on the bed. The ceiling looked the same as yesterday, but I didn't. Something in my chest had settled, firm and quiet. The phone rang again, this time from reception. A visitor for you, Ms. Everson. She's asking to come up. Who is it? I asked, though I already knew. Your daughter. I sat up, brushed my hair, straightened my blazer. The elevator ride was a slow, steady rise, almost symbolic. When the doors opened, Lena stood there, not crying, not frantic, but tired, like someone who finally put down a burden they'd been carrying alone. Mama, she said softly, I need to talk to you. I nodded once. Then let's talk. But nothing prepared Celeste for what Lena confessed next, truths about Derek, their marriage, and the secret she'd been hiding for years. Lena followed me into the quiet seating area near the elevators, where golden light spilled from overhead fixtures and softened everything it touched. She looked drained, not just tired, but like a woman who'd been living on borrowed strength. Come, I said, gesturing to a pair of chairs tucked away from the lobby's bustle. She sat down slowly. I remained standing for a moment, watching her. Mothers know when something is brewing behind their children's eyes. Lena's held a storm. I didn't come for a fight, she said quietly. I couldn't handle one even if I wanted to. Good, I replied, taking a seat. We're not here for shouting, we're here for truth, let it come out. She swallowed hard and twisted her fingers together, that nervous gesture she used to do it when she was 8, trying to hide a broken vase behind her back. I need to tell you something, she whispered. About Derek, about everything. I waited. No pushing. Silence is more powerful than pressure. She inhaled sharply as if bracing herself. We weren't saving for a house, she said. Not really. I didn't speak. He told me we were, he showed me numbers, charts, lines going upward, but I never actually saw the money. I trusted him. I didn't want to upset him by questioning. Her voice cracked. And every time I asked if we should budget differently or maybe spend less, he'd get angry. Not shouting, just that cold, punishing silence he does. The kind that makes you apologize for breathing. I felt something inside me tighten, a familiar ache. I had lived with a man like that once, before I learned silence was just another kind of control. Lena looked down at her hands. He told me you had it easy, she continued. That we were struggling and you should be helping us more. He said you owed it to us because you had a house and a pension, and her voice shrank. And because you didn't need much. I exhaled slowly. So he had weaponized my generosity. Classic. He said you were selfish, Lena whispered, tears forming, that you wouldn't understand how hard life is now, that you were old-fashioned. Old-fashioned. A word men like him use when they can't manipulate the woman in front of them. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? I asked softly. She shook her head. I thought it was normal. Every couple has problems. Every marriage has tension. But today, in that office, when I saw those papers. Mama, there was nothing. No savings, no investments, just losses, loss after loss. Her shoulders shook once. Not quite a sob, but the beginning of one. And do you know the worst part? She whispered. I realized I wasn't staying because I loved him. I was staying because I was afraid. I took her hand gently. Afraid of what, Lena? She hesitated, then looked me directly in the eyes. Afraid he'd leave me, she said. Afraid I'd disappoint him. Afraid I'd end up alone and that you'd be disappointed in me too. I didn't react right away. The last part hit harder than any of the rest. Lena, I said quietly, my disappointment isn't in you, it's in the years you forgot your worth. A small sob escaped her, she covered her mouth. I hid things from you, she whispered. His temper, his drinking, the way he'd throw things not at me but near me, just enough to scare me. I thought if I told you you'd force me to leave him, and I wasn't ready. My heart clenched, but not with guilt, with recognition. Listen to me, I said, leaning in, you're not weak, you were conditioned. He chipped away at your confidence piece by piece. That's not love, that's survival wrapped in fear. She nodded shakily. Do you want to leave him now? I asked. Her answer came fast, too fast. Yes, she blinked, startled by her own certainty. Yes, she said again, firmer this time. I want out. Tomorrow, I replied, squeezing her hand, you go to that meeting not as his wife, but as a woman reclaiming her life. She wiped her cheeks and breathed deeply. Mama, thank you, she whispered. For saying no, for once your no saved me. I smiled sadly. Sometimes no is the only word that opens a real door. She stood slowly. I should go, she said. Zoe's waiting, I'll text you when I'm settled. I nodded. She started toward the entrance, but halfway there she stopped and turned. There's one more thing, she said quietly. But I'm scared to tell you. My heart paused. Tell me tomorrow, I replied. When you're ready. She nodded and left. I watched her go with a strange mixture of sorrow and pride, my daughter finally taking ownership of her life. But as I stepped back into the elevator, a thought struck me like a sudden cold draft. What could she possibly be hiding that was worse than everything she'd already confessed? The answer would arrive the next morning, when Lena revealed a secret that didn't just involve Derek, but the house itself. I arrived at Andrew Sterling's office early the next morning. The receptionist greeted me with a knowing nod, as if she could sense that today wasn't just another appointment, it was a turning point. While I waited, I ran my fingers over the spine of my notebook. Inside it were lists, dates, steps, consequences. Order, the thing my life had lacked for years. At 9:56 a.m., the door swung open. Lena walked in. But this time she looked different, still tired but in control. Her hair neatly tied back, her clothes ironed, and most importantly, no Derek behind her. "You came alone," I said softly. "I had to," she replied. She sat down beside me, silent for a moment, wringing her hands. "Mama," she whispered, "I need to tell you the rest now, before we meet Andrew." I waited. She took a deep breath. "The secret I didn't tell you yesterday, it's about the house." My stomach tightened, not with fear but with a sense of approaching clarity. "What about it?" I asked. She stared at the floor. "Derek was planning something," she said. "Something with your house. That's why he didn't want you involved in anything. Why he didn't want you seeing documents. Why he got angry whenever you opened your mail." A cold, familiar instinct awakened inside me, the kind that comes from decades of reading deeds, transfer papers, and property scams in county records. "What was he planning, Lena?" She clutched her purse like it was the only anchor she had left. "He was trying to convince me to get you to sign something," she said. "He called it a small amendment to your will, something to simplify inheritance. But it wasn't that." Her breath shook. "I finally checked his email last night while he was showering," she continued. "He wasn't trying to simplify anything. He was trying to push through a transfer on death deed, one that would give the house entirely to me and him as joint tenants." I leaned back, stunned but not surprised. "And let me guess," I said quietly. "He planned to pressure you into signing it." She nodded miserably. "He had instructions drafted, step by step, how to get you emotional, what topics to bring up, even which memories of Dad to mention to soften you. He researched how older homeowners get manipulated. Mama, he studied it like a strategy." A cold fury settled into my bones, not wild, not chaotic, but sharp, focused, surgical. This wasn't just disrespect. This wasn't just entitlement. This was intent. "Did he already file anything?" I asked. She shook her head fast. "No, I checked. Nothing recorded. He needed your signature first." I exhaled. Thank God for small mercies. "And Mama," she swallowed hard, "there's more." Of course there was. Men like Derek never do anything halfway. "He took photos," she whispered. "Of your documents, your deed, your ID, even your signature on old birthday cards I had. He wanted to try matching your handwriting in case you refused." A quiet, dangerous stillness settled inside me, the kind that fills a courtroom right before a judge delivers a sentence. "Forgery," I said flatly. "He was preparing for possible forgery." She nodded again, eyes shining with shame, not for herself, but for the life she'd allowed him to build around her. "I didn't know how bad it was," she whispered. "I didn't want to believe it." "You believed what you were taught to believe," I said. "You're unlearning now, that's enough." Before she could respond, Andrew opened the door. "We're ready," he said gently. We stepped inside the conference room, no shouting today, no Derek pounding on tables. Just Lena, me, and the law. Andrew listened carefully as Lena explained everything, the scheme, the draft emails, the manipulation. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Celeste," he said, "your instinct to act quickly saved your property. Had he gotten your signature under pressure or worse, attempted a forgery, you'd be fighting a legal war for years." I nodded slowly. "This can be documented," he continued. "And if he attempts anything else, we move to protective measures." Lena exhaled, relief mixed with dread. Andrew finished with a single sentence. "You didn't just evict a tenant, you stopped a man who was preparing to erase you from your own home." When we stepped out of the office, Lena stood on the sidewalk, breathing like a woman surfacing from deep water. "There's something I need to do," she said. "Alone." "What is it?" She looked determined. "I'm going to tell Derek I'm divorcing him, not later, not eventually, today." I studied her face. She wasn't trembling anymore. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "I'm done choosing fear." I touched her arm gently. "Then go and do it," with a steady voice. She nodded, hugged me briefly, then walked toward the rideshare area, each step firm like someone learning to own their ground. I watched her go, not worried. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't walking toward danger. She was walking toward herself. But just as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. The message made my breath stop mid-inhale. "Ms. Everson, this is the building manager. Derek is at your house. He just tried to enter." And what waited inside that house, the confrontation, the consequences, and the final shift of power, would redefine everything Celeste thought the end of this story would be. The message from the building manager echoed in my mind as I rushed toward the cab stand. "Derek is at your house. He just tried to enter." The cab driver barely had time to ask where I was headed. "Home," I said sharply, "and please quickly." The ride felt longer than it was. My fingers drummed against my purse in a steady rhythm, matching the pulse in my chest. Not fear, anticipation. Derek was cornered now, and cornered men rarely walk, they lash, flail, grasp. But he had one obstacle he'd never been able to maneuver around: paper, law, and a woman who finally stopped shrinking. When the cab turned onto my street, I saw him immediately. Derek stood at my gate, pounding it with the side of his fist like he could bully the metal into obedience. The building manager, a tall man named Kyle, kept a cautious distance, arms crossed. I stepped out of the cab slowly. Derek saw me and spun around. "You," his voice cracked under the weight of his own outrage. "Open the gate, now." "No," the word landed between us with the finality of a judge's gavel. He stalked toward me until Kyle stepped in. "Sir, you need to lower your voice. The neighbors have called twice already." Derek glared at him, then turned that fury back on me. "You think you can just toss us out, after everything I've done for Lena, for you?" "For me," I repeated. "You turned off my TV and ordered me to my room." His nostrils flared. "You're being dramatic." I reached into my purse and held up a clear plastic folder, Roman's inventory checklist, the signed handover agreement, and the notice. "All I'm being," I said calmly, "is lawful." Derek stepped closer, voice dropping into that cold, venomous tone he usually saved for Lena. "You're going to regret this. She's leaving you too, you know. She'll realize you poisoned her against me." "No," I said softly. "She realized you were poisoning her against herself." He scoffed, but it sounded more like a swallowed panic. "I want my things," he demanded. "You took them yesterday," I replied. "Everything on the inventory list, signed by you." "I left some items behind." "Then Roman will retrieve them and deliver them to a neutral location. You are not stepping inside." He took another step forward, fury sharpening into desperation. "You can't keep me out of a house I lived in for years," I nodded once. "You're right," I said evenly. "The lock is keeping you out." His face contorted. "You think this is over? I'll fight, I'll get a lawyer. I'll sue you for emotional damages." I raised a hand, silencing him. "I spoke to Andrew this morning. If you pursue legal action, the first thing we will present is your financial misconduct. The gambling losses, the margin calls, the attempted manipulation of a vulnerable homeowner, and the screenshots of those strategy emails Lena found." His anger faltered. You don't have those." "Lena does," I replied, "and she has already forwarded them." He froze. For the first time since I'd known him, Derek looked genuinely afraid, not angry, not irritated, but afraid. You. "You turned her against me," he whispered. "No," I said, "you gave her nothing worth staying for." His mouth opened, but no words formed. Kyle stepped between us gently. "Sir, if you continue, I'll have to call the police." Derek's jaw tightened. His eyes darted between me, the gate, and the street, calculating an exit. He chose retreat. "Fine," he hissed. "Tell Lena she ruined everything." I met his gaze without blinking. "No, she saved herself." He looked like he wanted to spit back something cruel, but instead he turned, stomped down the sidewalk, and disappeared around the corner. The moment his silhouette vanished, the air seemed to expand. Even the hinges of the gate felt lighter. Inside the house, the quiet was different than before, not heavy, not hollow, just mine. I opened all the windows, letting sunlight spill across the newly painted peach walls. The scent of fresh paint mixed with warm air. Life, not tension, filled the space. As I set my purse on the table, my phone buzzed. "Lena," I told him, "it's done, I'm filing, I want to start fresh. Can I come over later, as a guest?" I smiled me. "Yes, as a guest, the door is open at 6. At 6:02 she knocked softly, 3 gentle taps. Not a demand, a request. Her eyes were tired but clear. She sat at the kitchen table while I poured us tea. "This feels different," she said quietly. "It is," I replied. "This is not a refuge, it's a visit." She nodded, accepting the boundary without hesitation. We talked about her new studio apartment, her plans, the job she might apply for. No crying, no begging, just 2 women building new truths. When she left, the house was quiet again, but this time a warm quiet. I walked into the family room and placed my keys on the table. No other keys sat beside them. No shadow lingered behind me. No footsteps approached to turn off my TV. I picked up the remote, pressed the power button, and let music fill the room, not too loud, not too soft. Exactly how I wanted it. The story didn't end with chaos. It ended with peace earned, claimed, and protected. A home restored, a daughter reclaimed, a woman reborn, and for the first time in years I whispered to myself, "Welcome home."